Alright, so my project is on the formation of the Great Lakes and what kind of processes it took to make them and why they're important today and how they contribute to society and basically what the future of them looks like and, predictions and theories of what might happen to them, I guess. So, first of all, they were formed during the Pleistocene epoch, and during this time there were a few different ice ages that occurred, but this one was one of the most recent, about 18,000 years ago. There was a glacier called the Laurentide, and it covered about most of North America, and it was 4 kilometers thick, or about 4,000 meters thick, which is huge. And the movement of the glaciers, basically they carved out valleys and made holes and stuff in the Earth's crust. And this picture is just showing the depth of the lakes and how deep the glacier made them. And to continue on to that, the carving of these valleys and craters is called glacial erosion, and it also created the St. Lawrence Seaway, which is crucial in the waterways of the Great Lakes. So basically after a couple thousand years, the Laurentide finally began to retreat and melt because global temperatures were rising, and of course a mass amount of water was produced from this, and so the glacier shrunk and the valleys and craters filled up with water, and those are what the Great Lakes are today. And excess water from that exited from St. Lawrence Seaway and into the Atlantic Ocean. So here's just a couple pictures that I found. It's basically the glacial formation kind of thing that occurred, and this is formation over a few thousand of years, just kind of showing how the lakes were formed. Okay, and so the economic importance of Great Lakes, there's a few different importance of them, but they provide about 20% of the whole world's fresh water, and even more importantly, they provide about 90 or 95% of North America's fresh water. And pollution levels are rising a lot in these, although they were previously, like years and years ago, the pollution levels were very high and there was great mercury content in the fish, and a lot of the water was just very toxic, and it was very bad for the animals that lived there, and it kind of destroyed some of the biodiversity. And it kind of fixed, but the issue with pollution was put on a back burner basically, and pollution is kind of becoming more prominent in the lakes. And they're also very important in preventing floods because they provide a large area for rainwater to drain and that sort of thing. And if the lakes weren't here to catch all the excess water, it could cause a lot of issues with residential and commercial areas probably. And most areas surrounding the lakes would be greatly and negatively affected. So the Great Lakes also supports a vast ecosystem, and it really, really has to be protected. It supports about 150 different species of fish. Among that are the lake sturgeon, which are one of the most endangered fish there, and I believe you're not allowed to fish for them. And the wetlands surrounding that are also really important to the waterfowl that migrate there. And there's also a video, but I'm not going to open it because it's kind of long. This is a picture which just shows the stress on the ecosystems within them, and as you can see, Lake Huron and Erie and Ontario, or Lake Michigan I guess, they're all very, the ecosystems are very stressed and very in danger, especially in Lake Ontario. And I believe that has to do with probably the fact that major cities are surrounding it, and a lot of factories are likely dumping their waste there and that sort of thing. And next, it also provides a source of energy, not directly from the water necessarily, but the water that flows from the lakes and all the way into Niagara Falls, it follows a pattern. It goes from Lake Superior in Lake Michigan into Lake Huron, which flows to Lake Erie, and then that water flows to the falls. And a lot of hydroelectricity is generated there at a plant, and I don't remember the name of it, but it's a very, very important plant. It provides most of the electricity for Ontario. And the areas around the lakes are also very important. There's a lot of wind farms and wind turbines surrounding, and that provides a lot of energy too. It's one of the most major sources. And the hydraulic fracturing also occurs in lake regions as well as other regions. But in these areas, hydraulic fracturing is a method of extracting petroleum and gasoline from the earth. And doing this around the lakes, I don't believe it's a very good idea because it can contaminate the water very easily. It seems like a kind of a messy sort of project, and I feel like the water could get in the water very easily. Okay, and examining the future of the Great Lakes, obviously if habits are not cleaned up and more environmentally friendly ways of disposing waste, and just in general like people's living habits, if those aren't modified and cleaned up, the lakes are going to be extremely polluted, and this is going to lead to our drinking water is going to be very limited, as it does, the Great Lakes provide almost 95% of our fresh water, as mentioned before. It's also predicted that a lot of more species will become endangered, mainly the fish, because of the pollution in the water. And there's also an article, and it lists off different species that are already endangered in this area, and they mostly consist of birds, because birds eat fish, and the fish live in the lake, and the fish become contaminated, the birds will eat the contaminated fish, and then they'll get sick, and it's just kind of a chain reaction sort of thing. The bald eagle is one of the most endangered species that live around the lakes, basically. And people are just recently becoming more educated on the effects of pollution and how the lakes are being affected, and it's becoming kind of a more pressing issue, and more attention is being paid to it, and a few methods are being examined and enacted, and people are sort of cleaning up their habits a little bit more. And this picture just sort of shows, it's a little blurry. So that Lake Superior has the best water quality, but Lake Erie and Lake Ontario and Lake Huron and Georgian Bay, all these kinds of lakes that are a little more southern and near the coastline, these are all the water quality is just not very good. And once again, this is probably due to the fact that they're located near major cities, which is near factories and waste disposal and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, erosion will occur with the lakes. Simply, water erosion is going to erode away the coastlines of the lakes, probably going to make them a little bigger and broaden the coastlines. And another major concern is not directly with the lakes, but with Niagara Falls. A lot of erosion is going on with that, and it has eroded a lot of the past thousands of years, basically. Today the erosion rate is about 3 or 4 inches a year, but since about the 1670s there has been a 7-mile gorge created, but 12,500 years ago a 7-mile gorge has been created there, which is a lot of erosion, as you can tell with the picture, and the erosion rate is still increasing. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens. If the lakes do erode too extensively, I believe that it will have not really a negative impact, but it will erode quite drastically back into Lake Erie. And this is just a picture showing how much the lake has eroded since the 1670s. And also today there's a major concern of the drainage of the lakes. There's decreasing water levels. They're decreasing drastically, and it's kind of worrisome because the water provided is decreasing, and the two main lakes that are decreasing are Lake Michigan and Lake Huron, and they even set records for the lowest water levels in about 2012. And there's a few reasons about why they're so low, but they can't be pinpointed exactly. It's kind of a collaboration of a bunch of little reasons. Mainly, it's been predicted that a lack of precipitation has occurred. We're kind of undergoing a dry spell, and there's little runoff water going into the lakes, and also the lakes are draining into the ocean, and with the lack of precipitation, they're not being filled up again. So yeah, and there's also issues with the temperature and the climate, and the temperature going up means more evaporated water, and then the lack of precipitation means it's not getting it back. And scientifically, it has been found that these lakes kind of go through a cycle of water levels where they drop low and then they'll rise again and then they'll drop low. So I don't believe it's a major concern. I think that the levels will return to normal eventually once precipitation levels pick up again. And this is just a chart kind of showing how the water levels have changed, and it doesn't really show much of a pattern, but this is a very short timeline. I believe that the pattern of the lakes probably would look similar to this thousands of years back, I would assume, seeing as how it has been, studies have shown that there's a cycle that they undergo, although the levels, as you can tell, are very, very low compared to how they used to be. So it's kind of worrisome, although I think they'll pick back up. And these are just some extra thinking questions that I thought were kind of interesting. If the water level of the lakes are going down, where is all that water going? Next is, with all the pollution and stuff, what do you think could happen to the biodiversity or the ecosystems in the Great Lakes regions in just a few short years or even a few decades? I think it'd be interesting to see. And do you think that the geology of the Great Lakes will be drastically changed in thousands of years, depending on the occurrences that go on due to maybe water erosion or wind erosion, something like that? So, thanks for listening.